Good morning, Hannah. It's Sunday, and it's summer! Do not break out into Frozen songs, Nabeel. Do not break out into Frozen songs. You do not want to kill these innocent people. Do not sing. Okay, so summer apparently means summer homework because the people who invented homework decided that torturing people throughout just 9 months of the year isn't enough. You have to torture them throughout the year. So for summer homework, I'm reading this book, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. Now you can see his full name. He's sort of arrogant, but he's also kind of humble about it. He's like humbly arrogant. But I suppose he has the right to be arrogant because his last name is a precious metal. Precious stone. Diamond is not a metal. So he has the right, I suppose. I mean, if my name was a precious stone, I would feel pretty arrogant about that. Is that a normal thing? So when I was reading this book, I haven't actually gone that far. Only at this part. The rest of the post-its are for the person I borrowed it from. I came across Eurocentrism, which is one of my least favorite things in general. It's the idea that Europe, most of the history for a long time, up until very recently, was focused on Europe. A rather small continent that doesn't actually deserve to be a continent. I mean, the Ural Mountains are not that much of a continental divider, seriously. If India is not its own continent, Europe has no right to be its own continent, but that's another story. So basically, most of history was focused, well, most of the historical things that we had in the West, and most which is considered history, comes from a somewhat biased European perspective, but up until very recently where we start to break out of that. And this book also makes it very clear that it's not going from a Eurocentric perspective. But it's really annoying that for that large period of time, we completely ignored what was happening throughout the world and just imposed Europe's idea. And when we talked about the rest of the world, it was through the lens of Europe. And we named the entire age the Dark Ages, the classically called the Middle Ages. We called them for a while we called them the Dark Ages, and they're still called the Dark Ages. It's just another name for the Middle Ages. But it was called that because in Europe, times were pretty bad. Feudalism, all sorts of rough stuff going on. But the fact is that in China and the Middle East, life was pretty lighty. Despite the fact, I mean, yes, it was pretty lighty because the Middle East is a desert. There's a lot of light in the desert. And not that much in Europe because it rains. You know, England and rain. So all this is really just to lead up to me going to be talking about perspective today. Again, that wasn't grammar. Why can I never grammar? Mike's gonna kill me for saying this. Okay, so basically what hit me this week to talk about was perspective, because I was in a mood and also because of Mr. Diamond. So, perspective. One of the main problems of humanity in general, and I'm definitely not exempt from this, is not being able to see things from other people's perspective. And oddly enough, one of the first things that comes up to my mind when I think about perspective is that one scene in Ratatouille. That was just kind of random. That one scene in Ratatouille at the end where the food critic is saying to the waiter dude who's the main character, I need to rewatch Ratatouille. But that one scene where the food critic's like, bring me some perspective, or a side of perspective, or something like that. I still don't get that scene. But the voice, it just kind of sticks in my head. Stop getting distracted, Nabeel. Okay, so I was talking about perspective, how people are. Why am I so distracted? I was talking about how words do not come out of my mouth in the correct sequence of language to make stuff that. What time was I? Oh, okay. So people normally find it hard to see things from other people's perspective. It's sort of a chronic thing with mankind in general. We tend to focus on what we see through our lens, through what is fed through us through the media, or through other ways of obtaining knowledge, and we don't normally tend to see things from the other guy's side, or the other side's side. That was repetitive. But we don't tend to see things from an outside perspective, or just seeing things from how other people would see it, rather than what we think from our information, from our ideas, from what we have formulated in our heads. And it's kind of really annoying. I mean, as I've said, I'm not exempt from this. I do it a lot too, and I'm trying to fix that, but it's hard because it's sort of ingrained into what we are as people and what we've been taught. Maybe it's not actually ingrained into us. Maybe it's just what I think and how I'm feeling, and the world is actually a happy place, and I live in a dejected corner of myself. Well, that's depressing. I actually don't think that at all. I'm not really sure. I'm only speaking from what I've seen. Again, disclaimer at the bottom of the doobly-doo. Look at that. It's basically just what I've seen, what I'm thinking, my opinions. I understand how this might be slightly judgmental about a lot of people and a lot of things. I don't suppose any of you guys out there do this. I suppose that anyone out the other side of this magical window of YouTube is a good, honest person who does not judge people based on what they think and instead looks at the other people's perspectives. I think I've talked long enough about this stuff and in a really confusing manner, and I hope you guys all understood what I was trying to say here. And also, it is partially related to the fact that you guys did not think of it from my perspective when you gave me that ridiculous nickname that you, all of the people who I do not know what I'm saying will understand tomorrow. Trevor, my name is not Mabel, but you're going to say it anyways. DFTBA, see you tomorrow.